Yeah, I know it's been a really long time, guys, but welcome back to the channel, I guess. So I guess before we get into today's video, I owe an explanation as to why I've been gone so long. First and foremost were some personal commitments I had, chief amongst them being a wedding I had to attend. One of my good friends got married last month, and I was chosen to be in the wedding, which I was very honored about and very happy to attend. I was involved in a lot of the preparations for that because of that, though. Also, several trips I took over the past couple weeks. I have not been in town on a weekend in a while. I've been traveling a lot. Also, I made a grave mistake in terms of time management in that I started playing the Trails series of video games, and those games have absolutely taken over my life. I don't know if you guys have ever played the Trails games, but they're basically like the MCU of JRPGs, and it's just 12 games and it's one huge long story, and every game is connected to each other in the same worlds kind of thing. I played the first two Cold Steel games, then I played the Crossbell games, and then I beat Cold Steel 3, and I'm about 30 hours into Cold Steel 4 now at this point. So I just went nuts with that, and I really owe you guys an apology. I did not mean to take such a long break. It's just a lot of things kind of hit me all at once. But I am back, and today we are going to be starting the Volume 2 episode breakdowns of Overlord, going into more of Season 1. So I actually made a little bit of a mistake in the last video I did on Overlord. So what I wanted to do was actually share some of the extras that are in the light novel, and one of those extras are some character sheets that are at the very end here. I'll see if I can hold them up to the camera. I'll see if I can find some pictures online for you guys to look at these things so you don't have to keep viewing this crappy image that I'm holding up to the camera. At the very end of Volume 1, we have one on Ainz, Albedo, Aura, and Mare, and there's the pictures of Aura and Mare right there. And it just kind of breaks down their stat spread. It gives you an idea more of their racial and job levels as well. So like I said, I'll probably put some pictures up in post of these actual spreadsheets if I can find it. But that's something I wanted to just share with you guys. That's just a little extra you get when you buy the actual hard copies of the light novel. So now we are moving on today to Volume 2, which is the Dark Warrior arc. So once again, another little extra we get with the light novel is some cool, dope art from Sobin. And if I can get the save, curse these child-proof designs. We have a spread here of the Swords of Darkness and Moban and Nabe just kind of chilling there on their journey. I think that's a really cool piece of art. And then on the other side, we have a picture of Momon fighting against Clementine. I'm hoping I can see that. Hold on, wait a minute. Oh, God. Once again, we get to see some awesome art by Sobin. Just another perk of actually buying the physical copies of the light novels, which I just like reading hardback book, guys. I don't know if you guys do, but that's just a thing for me. So I will say another reason I feel like I maybe wasn't as motivated to make videos on this arc of Overlord is I'm just going to be straight up. This is probably my least favorite arc in all of Overlord. I think maybe that only applies to the anime though. I just feel like the pacing in this arc of the anime was really painfully slow for me, because I'm not entirely sure why. This is a really good world building arc of Overlord. It's the first time we're really exploring and immersing ourselves in the new world, with Momon and Nabe, posing as adventurers and integrating themselves into the society of Riestes. When I go back and rewatch episodes of Season 1, I usually skip over the Dark Warrior arc. Maybe I'll watch the last episode where the confrontation happens and everything, but for the most part, I just don't really watch this arc. So episode 5 of Season 1 of Overlord covers up to the end of, literally the very end of Chapter 1. It's actually right on the money, and I have to say, overall, very, very faithful adaptation. I would say that we just missed some, kind of ambient information. Probably one of the closest one-to-one adaptations that you're gonna get from light novel to anime. And I guess it's because, I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not, but in every season of Overlord, it's always 3 volumes per season, and it's 13 episodes per season, but because 13 isn't divisible by 3, they always give one of the arcs one more episode than the other 2 volumes in that season. The Dark Warrior arc, Volume 2, is the arc that got the 5 episodes in Season 1, so I think maybe that's why the pacing was a little bit slower, but that also allowed them to do a little bit more world building, and why these episodes are probably such good adaptations, because they could take a little bit more time with it. So the episode starts off with that scene in Nazarick between Ainz and Albedo, and I guess the only thing I would want to add onto this scene is that it is a completely offhand one-sentence remark about the slain theocracy people being abducted by Ainz in the previous episode, and they were interrogated at Nazarick. And that's basically how Nazarick got a lot of their like preliminary information on the New World, is from the Sunlit Scripture members that they captured. And that information never stuck with me before I read the light novel. Like, I know they say it in the anime, but like it's just so brief. In the light novel, they actually give like a little bit more information. Apparently Negan died during his interrogation. They weren't able to get a whole lot of information out of Negan, who's the leader of the Sunlight Scripture, because he died during his interrogation. So they were a little too forceful, and that kind of actually set the bar, and that's why they backed off a little bit. Because they realize that the humans are a lot more fragile than the creatures they're used to interacting with. So moving on, we then have that next scene taking place in Irantel. Something that's added in the light novel during this scene is you get more of a description as to how Irantel looks, and I'm not sure if I was misreading what this said in the light novel, but from what it sounds like, Irantel is called the Fortress City. It's really close to the borders of other countries, so it's supposed to be a very fortified city. From what the design was explained in the light novel, it sounds almost like the walls like in Attack on Titan. It said like there were 3 concentric walls. The outer section is the merchant district, and then like the inner section is like the administrative district. And then we have the first scene with Ainz and Nabaril going into the inn, posing as copperplate adventurers. And there's a couple things in this scene that were kind of like added onto in the light novel that really kind of changed my whole outlook on how this scene progressed. The innkeeper in the light novel doesn't seem like such an asshole that he is in the anime. In the light novel, he says that a room is 5 coppers, but it's a shared room, and the whole point of him offering Ainz the shared room is so it gives him a chance to network with other people and like form a party, because Ainz and Nabaril at this point are copperplates, and like the whole point of being a copperplate is you're a beginner, you don't really know the ropes, you're a rookie adventurer at this point. And so offering him the shared room is like kind of like actually trying to help him. He's trying to actually like let him meet new people so you can like join up, because copperplates should join up, you can network more. In the anime, it just seems like he just ups the price of for Ainz in Nabe to get a room for no reason, just because like I don't know, he didn't like Ainz's look or something. But in the light novel, he explains like, okay, if you don't want the shared room and you want a private room, then it'll be 7. And it was just like, I don't know why they did that. It just makes the innkeeper seem like an asshole. This also applies to the next guy that happens to interact with Ainz and Nabe in this scene. Goes up and, you know, kind of picks a fight with Ainz or whatever, even though that was stupid because Ainz is like 2 feet taller than him. I mean, all I'm saying is if I ran into a guy that was 8.5 feet tall, I probably wouldn't be picking a fight with him. In between that whole interaction with Britta and them leaving afterwards was all the same, but there's a little scene in the light novel afterwards where everyone's kind of talking, and apparently what went down, it was kind of a normal thing. Like basically it was just like kind of testing this guy to like see how he is. It wasn't meant to be like any sort of like asshole move. It wasn't just this guy being a prick or something like that. It's actually just like a rite of passage that they have like in this, and they all kind of know each other because this is like a gathering place for like, you know, low level adventurers, and everyone was like, oh shit, like this guy means business, so like we gotta, you know, treat him differently. And these aren't big deals, but I feel like removing it just made the whole vibe of the Adventurers Guild just get off on the wrong foot in the anime, because like in the light novel it explains that these people aren't being jerks. It's more of just like, this is the tradition, this is the thing, and this is what we do. I think you just get a lot more information and a different outlook on adventurers in the light novel than how the anime initially presents them. So moving on, we have that scene between Ainz and Nabaril in their room. There is an extra scene in the light novel. Ainz leaves the room in the light novel, and there's an extra scene where Nabe messages Albedo back at Nazarick, and there's this whole conversation between Nabaril and Albedo about like, oh, who supports me versus who supports Shaltir in terms of getting with Ainz. And Nabaril's like, oh, Yuri Alpha, who's like kind of like the big sister type NPC of like all the other Pleiades. Yuri Alpha doesn't really like Shaltir, so Yuri Alpha supports Albedo. Oh, but Solution and Shaltir have similar interests, so Solution supports Shaltir. Not a really big deal, but it is more like just character interactions amongst the NPCs of Nazarick, which I always love to see. So then we move on and we have that scene with Britta, Lizzie, and Furia. This is the first time we see those two. And honestly, I don't really have anything to add for this section, this was a pretty damn faithful adaptation, really. I mean, for the most part, I really can't think of anything like relevant to add in this scene. It was actually very, very good. Basically, that just gives you the understanding of, you know, what is shit to Ainz is actually a huge deal to these people. This, of course, triggers the events of this arc by generating Inferia's interests in Momon. So then moving to the next scene, we have that interaction between the Swords of Darkness at the guild with Ainz. Once again, the anime kind of lacks the details of what's going on in Ainz's mind whenever he asks about, like, oh, give me this job, but then they're like, no.
Why isn't it possible?
It's just not.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
Ainz kind of comes across as just pushing it, but in the light novel we get more inner dialogue into how he's kind of like, he understands the rules, and he's not pushing it just because he wants the job. He's pushing it to see how far he can actually stretch the rules and how far these rules actually go. And he's noticing that the people in the guild as well, the other adventurers, aren't liking the fact that he's a copper plate and he's trying to like jump up to this mithril rank quest. Like, they're not appreciating that. And then he meets the Swords of Darkness, and once again this interaction is mostly the same. I guess the big thing to comment on during this whole conversation between Momon and the Swords of Darkness is there is a very long in-depth explanation about talents during this section, because Nina mentions that they possess a talent which allows them to learn magic twice as fast, and then the light novel goes into this huge explanation about talents and how talents work. So for anyone who's unaware, talents are a concept that is native to the New World. They did not exist in Yggdrasil, kind of like martial arts. And basically what talents are just random abilities that are born to people at random in the New World. They're not crazy rare. According to Ainz in the light novel, 1 out of every 200 people gets them. So they're rare, but they're not like unheard of. Like running into someone with a talent isn't like something that, you know, you need to write home about. But the thing is that talents range in usefulness and power by a lot. Like, one example that's given in the light novel is like, oh, you can have a talent that lets you predict the weather, and then there's another talent, like the Queen of the Dragon Kingdom has a talent that lets her use wild magic. So like they just range wildly in terms of power and scale. Also, talents might not be compatible with the person that it's born to. Like, if someone learns a talent that's good with magic, but they can't use magic, then that talent is useless. So Nina is an example of the aptitude of the talent lining up with the aptitude of the person that has it. And then, of course, they mention Inferia, who has a very powerful talent which allows him to use any magic item without restrictions. And they show this in the anime too, but this is actually something that worries Ainz. Ainz is like, okay, this person might be a threat. You know, he wanted to experiment. He wanted to see, does that apply to world items? Does that apply to guild items? Like, he was curious, could Inferia use the Staff of Ainz Ul-Gon? Because, like, it's normally restricted to guild members, but, like, maybe he could use it. His talent would bypass that. And another thing that's kind of confusing Ainz at the same time, because there's a lot of aspects of the New World that mimic Yggdrasil, but then they have these other things, like martial arts talents that didn't exist in Yggdrasil, and, like, so there's these new things that he has to learn and how they interact with the Yggdrasil restrictions. And another thing I want to comment on in this scene is when Ainz shows his face. He does this in the anime too, but it's just kind of a general thing I wanted to comment on. In the light novel, he explains that most people in the Riestes kingdom, like or at least the parts that he's been experienced to, they kind of look European to him. You know, a lot of them have blonde hair, light eyes, blue eyes, things like that. They all look kind of Nordic. That's the standard look of someone from Riestes. You know, Ainz shows his fake face, and he has black hair, black eyes. You know, Nabaril has black hair, black eyes. And from the way I understand it is that, you know, Nabaril was kind of built to mimic like the traditional Japanese beauty of, you know, long black hair. You know, she has Asian features. And then, of course, you know, Suzuki Satoru, being Japanese, made a low-level illusion face that kind of sounded like it was Asian as well. Swords of Darkness mentioned that there's a country to the south with people that look like him. That just kind of stimulated my interest in seeing how the New World countries, maybe they reflect real world countries. I've kind of thought that maybe there are some things like that in the New World. I have drawn some parallels to some of the New World countries to real world countries. And the slain theocracies to the south of the Riestes Kingdom, but I don't think they were talking about that. I think they were talking about some other country we haven't seen yet in Overlord. And maybe that country, at least the people there at least, maybe mimic Asian appearance, black hair, black eyes. mean, I have black hair, I have dark brown eyes, they look black probably to you guys on film, but that just seems like, to me, that would be like a traditional Asian look versus like the European look of a lot of the people that are described to be in Riestes. So that was just something that kind of triggered my interest a little bit, and something I wanted to learn more about in the Overlord world. Basically, Inferior is just like, hey, I want to know more about these potions, but I'm going to pretend like this is going to go on. And I guess they do communicate this in the anime, but they really make a point out of it in the light novel that Ainz does not trust Inferior. He is very iffy about this whole thing. He's wondering why this is going down. So he's going into this, light-footed. He's going into this knowing that there is something up with him being requested, but he's not sure for certain. But that basically just establishes that, I don't trust this guy, but I'm gonna go along with this because this could be a good learning experience for me. And then the episode ends with the first introduction of the antagonists of this arc, which are Clementine and Khajiit. Once again, this is a pretty similar interaction in the light novel. The only thing I would want to say is that during the conversation between Clementine and Khajiit, Khajiit comments like, "Oh, why did you grab the Crown of Wisdom? Like why didn't you grab something stronger? Like the Crown of Wisdom, makes people go crazy using it. Let's get something else." Clementine's like, "Oh, I couldn't grab any of those because they're being guarded by the captain of the Black Scripture, who is a godkin." And if you guys want to know about godkins, I do explain that in my Slain Theocracy video. By New World standards, they are ludicrously powerful, and even Clementine, who's like very, very cocky and arrogant about her skills, is just like, no, that guy's a monster. There's no way I could ever beat him, so there's no way I can get past him and steal that stuff. And another thing is we get a little more info on the Slain Theocracy in this conversation in the light novel, because basically the Crown of Wisdom is a very special magic item from the Slain Theocracy. Basically turns the user into an item that can use like high tier magic, and I say high tier relative to the New World, but it is a very powerful item in the New World. And because it turns the user into an item, whenever they're removed, obviously the user just goes crazy, and that's what happens to the Shrine Princesses in the Slain Theocracy. Basically, how Khajiit describes it is that it's so rare to find someone that can use it that like only the Slain Theocracy could manage that, because the Slain Theocracy is like I think they say it's the only country that has like an actual census, like a citizens registry. So that just goes to show you how advanced just in political infrastructure that the Slain Theocracy is ahead of these other countries in the region, that they actually are able to conduct like a census, and that's why they're able to use the Crowns of Wisdom, because they're able to find people in that registry that can actually use them and turn them into the Shrine Princesses for those rituals. And so that's just a little more world building in terms of the Slain Theocracy, a little more information, saying like describing godkins, what they are and how their existence is secret, and also describing the Slain Theocracy relative to other countries, because the Slain Theocracy and Riestes are basically the only two countries we know anything about at this point in the light novel. So guys, that pretty much wraps up this breakdown. Once again, this is a pretty faithful adaptation chapter episode. Well, as with a lot of the other earlier episodes, you miss out on some like world building, inner dialogue stuff that is very interesting to anyone who's a fan of Overlord like myself. I especially love the stuff on talents. I love learning about these new mechanics and everything and things like that. It's just, I don't know, it's just intriguing to me, maybe because I'm a huge nerd. But guys, once again, I'm sorry it took me so long. Hopefully I'm going to get back into the normal swing of things with these uploads, getting through this next volume of Overlord, and hopefully through all of Season 1. So guys, what did you think of this breakdown? Did you learn anything new? Leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see another breakdown soon, leave a like to let me know. And if you aren't already, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out more than you know, and it'll let you know when I post in the future. With that being said, I want to thank you all for watching to the very end of the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye.